been hugely influential advocates for either side. Dave Smith is a libertarian commentator, a comedian, and the host of the Part of the Problem podcast. Natasha Hausdorff is a barrister, international lawyer, and a passionate supporter of Israel. Let's welcome you both to Uncensored. Dave Smith, I finally lost it, really, with any attempt to try and defend what Israel was doing, having been a pretty steadfast defender of its right to defend itself from what happened on October the 7th. But when you launch a blockade for 3 months at an already utterly tormented civilian population who are already struggling to eat, and you can see from the scenes that we've seen in the last 48 hours that they are starving people prepared to risk death to get their hands on meager amounts of food. When a government like Israel does that, at the same time as it's simultaneously bombarding those people night after night after night, albeit with the crucial caveat they always put in that they are targeting Hamas solely and that everything around Hamas is collateral damage. But to me, this reached a point where it became clearly disproportionate. And that's a view that clearly the UK has reached, the French have reached, many people in America have reached. You certainly haven't come to that thought process in the last few months. You've been saying that for a long time. The question I have for you, what happens though now? We are where we are. Netanyahu and his government are in charge. Nobody seems to be stopping them. What happens?
Well, that is a good question, and I don't know for sure what the answer is. By the way, it's been great to watch your evolution on this topic, Piers. It's good that you joined us. Later is better than never.
Yeah, to clarify, I would say this: I don't want to I was in the Middle East last week by chance. A lot of people come up to me going, "Thank you for switching sides," and I said, "I haven't switched sides. I've always tried to be a fair-minded, impartial journalist doing the job a journalist should do, which is challenging everybody." I think I've had more guests on from both sides, actually, and held more debates than any other show in the world of this kind. So, I do think it's important. I don't want to be seen as taking a side. What I feel now, though, I think it's an important clarification, but what I think is important now is that this has gone too far. And I can see that very clearly.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't mean to box you into a side, just making the point that you have come to the conclusion that what Israel's doing is indefensible. And I thought it was fascinating and shocking watching you grill the Israeli ambassador, who simply cannot tell you or even ballpark how many kids they have killed in this whole thing. Yeah, look, I mean, I think what Israel, to your broader question of where does this all end up going, there's almost two kind of simultaneous wars in a sense that are going on. There's the actual, control of power, in which case Israel's done phenomenally well over the last couple years. I mean, Israel still has the support of the most powerful governments in the world, damn near unconditionally, if not purely unconditionally. They've been very successful in terms of taking out Hezbollah leaders. They've been very successful in terms of destroying the Gaza Strip. They've been successful in getting the regime change that they've wanted for many years in Syria. However, simultaneously, while that's going on, global opinion has drastically changed of Israel to a degree that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. And despite whatever arguments might be made for whether this meets a genocide or doesn't meet a genocide, or whether, as two former Israeli prime ministers who have come out recently and said that war crimes are being committed, wherever you fall on that, the fact is that the debate is now over whether Israel is committing a genocide or not. And that is something that all of us should take a step back and appreciate how profound it is. Especially amongst young people, in the future, I don't believe Israel will ever be viewed the same as it was by my parents' generation. And so what does that mean? As you mentioned earlier, Piers, that's right. This is a big part of how wars end, is when public support evaporates. We will see where all of this goes, but it is a very dangerous situation. And it is certainly profound to the degree that it has changed the impression of Israel on the global stage.
Yeah. Natasha, I mean, look, if I was an Israeli, a regular Israeli, I would be pretty concerned that people like me have come to the place we've come to in this debate. I've been harangued by pro-Palestinians for a long time for being too supportive of Israel's right to defend itself. Harangued, abused, mocked, threatened, all of the things that come with that in a war. But I just felt I couldn't do anything else but speak out. When you launch a 3-month blockade against a people already suffering in the way that these Palestinians have been suffering, and I'm not talking about Hamas, I'm talking about the innocent civilians in Gaza. It's a population of 2 million, with half of them under 18. More than 20,000 children have been killed, even if the UK ambassador has no idea what that number is, but knows exactly how many Hamas terrorists have been killed, oddly. I would just be concerned, if I was an average Israeli, that people that supported us after the horrors of October the 7th are now beginning to go against, certainly in my case, the Israeli government, not the people of Israel, not Jewish people. They will always have my support. But this Israeli government is out of control. We saw and heard from the words of Smodrich last week, the finance minister, a very clear mission statement to clear out all the Palestinians from Gaza. That is a form of genocide, whatever. You're a lawyer. You'll probably tell me it doesn't meet the exact legal criteria of the word genocide. But if you're clearing out an entire people based on their ethnicity from where they live, that to me, and most people around the world who don't have a horse in this race, is a form of genocide. What do you say to that?
Well, Piers, I'm particularly glad of the opportunity to come on, not before time, and address so much of this misinformation, which seems to be at the core, not just of your shift, but what is a marked shift in the public discussion of this topic. And it is, of course, because of the abuse, the haranguing, the mockery, and the threats and the intimidation that so many people are falling into the easy line.
Well, that's not why I've changed my mind.
Well,
I don't give a damn about who threatens me or how they threaten me or how they mock and abuse me. Listen, I was getting all that long before this war. So I get it on pretty much any debate I ever have. That's fine. I'm a big boy. So please don't misconstrue anything that I have done in terms of a pivot in the way I view this with anything to do with being threatened into it, bullied into it, or cajoled into it, because that would be ridiculous.
Because you've been clear that this is because of the change in the narrative around this. And I hope I'll have the opportunity, and you'll allow me the opportunity to address some of this false information. And there is a great deal of it. It starts with this notion that Israel imposed an entire blockade on aid, which is being put forward without the context of the fact that in the hostage release deal, which preceded it immediately, there were over 25,000 trucks of aid that were facilitated into the Gaza Strip by Israel. The estimates that I have seen is that that should have been a stockpile of between 5 to 6 months of food and humanitarian assistance. Some estimates are in the region of 8 months. Where did that aid go? That is the question I would expect reasonable people without an agenda here to be asking. Where did that aid go if all of these claims of starvation are to be taken seriously? The reality here is that there is no Israeli-imposed starvation on the Gaza Strip, that there has been facilitated over the course of this war.
But that is simply not true.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Well, no, Piers, I like Piers, but he's going to have to let her finish, because if he gets into the frenzy of I'm going to debate and stop everything she says and not hold Smith into account either, just because he agrees with them, then we're going to have an issue, because this is not a debate. It's a 2 against 1. Listen, in this situation, we don't know who to believe. We don't know who to trust. People tell you one thing on the Israeli side. People tell you another thing on the Palestinian side. We don't know. But at the end of the day, we don't know what's truth. What we know is that Israel, as of late, has been, I don't know if it's a propaganda. I don't know if they're lying. I don't know if it's the truth. But the fact of the matter is that everybody right now are talking as if Israel is bombing children, women, innocent people in the Gaza, and I think that's incredible. That shouldn't be happening. But we don't know the truth. Which one is the truth? What is the truth of this matter right now as we speak? But you're gonna have to let her speak, because if not, then what's the point of this debate?
No, hang on.
That's what I'm saying. What's the point of the debate? Now we're gonna have to scroll forward in a lot. We're gonna forward to Natasha accuses Piers of propagating lies about Israel, and see where this goes. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and of course, yeah, subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of news, a lot of reactions for you, and I want this channel to be an open book, an open forum for everybody from either side to have their opinion, to have their whatever they want to say in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. So go ahead and do that, please, and let's get going.
Or even less than that. That, in any event, is unprecedented in the history of urban armed conflict. So it puts the lie to all of these accusations that we have been hearing. And the reason, let me finish this sentence, if you will, the reason that it is so terrible, that it is so dangerous that these lies are being spread about Israel, that even you and other respected international journalists have begun to propagate them, is that it is having a direct
calling me
impact.
a liar?
No, that you have been taken in by them.
Really?
Is because it is having a direct impact on the safety of Jews around the world. We've seen the impact of 14,000 babies in 48 hours when 2 Israeli staffers were murdered, executed on the streets of DC. Only yesterday we saw a fire attack.
What was the link?
against
What was the link there? Are you saying
the
that
fact
the person?
that 2 days after
are you
Tom
saying the person
Fletcher-
that perpetrated that appalling murder was actually even aware of the story you're talking about?
Well,
You're drawing a direct link.
The Chicagan that committed that murder shouted "Free Palestine," and this is for Gaza.
You mentioned something about 48,000
2
babies.
days after that full story went around the world.
It was a full story because the idiot that came out with it should have known better. I didn't promote that in any way at all, other than to say.
But you
he
are
was an
promoting
idiot.
false allegations of starvation and targeting
No,
civilians.
I'm promoting the fact that Israel's government launched a 3-month blockade, which has led
without
to
the context
people
of
starving.
25,000 tons of
All right.
trucks of
Let me
aid
bring
having
Dave.
been provided before that.
Dave.
Facts without
All right.
context are misleading.
All right, Dave, we're a bunch of deluded clowns who are being misled. Israel's government is telling the whole truth here. Everyone else is lying or being taken in by lies.
Yeah, it's just like, look, the
And we're putting
contradictions here.
Jews in danger by promoting these
well,
lies.
You know,
You're a
well,
Jewish
you know,
guy.
maybe, yes, I am, and maybe I'll respond to that. Well, first of all, I'll just say that even the idea, like as you hear these arguments, Piers, where they'll say like, well, we know these numbers that the Gaza Health Ministry puts out are lies because we know Hamas lies, and look, the proof of that is that they revised their numbers down at one point. But doesn't that just kind of lead to the question, Piers? Then, like, why would they revise their numbers down
why
if
wouldn't
they're
they
just
double
lying?
them?
Why? Yeah, right. Why wouldn't they just stick with the original
It's
numbers
not
that they had?
logical, to quote the buzzword of the debate.
It's what always happens with the pro-Israel people is like they use what is a point on my side as a point on their side.
And by the
like,
way, I wouldn't trust Hamas as far as I could bloody throw them, right? They're a bunch of despicable death cult murderers, right? Just to be crystal clear. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. And yet historically, their figures through this health authority in this conflict going back decades have turned out to be reasonably accurate. I know that because Israel has accepted them over the years.
And Piers,
But hold on, we can't have it both ways here. We can't have it both ways. It's like saying that Al Qaeda, their numbers, we're going to trust their numbers over, I don't know, the U.S. or the U.K. or whoever the conflict they were in conflict with. They are a terrorist group. Hamas is a terrorist group. Let's be clear and obvious. They are a terrorist group. They're not. They don't represent. I'm going to go on a limb and say that they don't represent the Palestinian people. Those people, the Palestinian people, want to have their country back, want to have their life back, want to live, want their kids to have a future, right? But Hamas is a terrorist group. So if Piers Morgan is saying that he cannot trust them as far as he can throw them, then you cannot take account their numbers and trust them, as they say them. So we can't have it both ways here. At the end of the day, I understand that Israel has committed a lot of. People say that they have committed a lot of crimes, war crimes, etc. Again, we don't know the truth. Or I'm from here in America. I don't know the whole truth. You will get different accounts from whoever you speak to, which is still not the truth in itself. But at the end of the day, we got to be a little bit more, you can't just trust a terrorist group just because they say it. They put their numbers down, and their logic is they would have doubled, right? So we got to keep a balance here. We can't just be one side or the other.
As you know, because I've been coming on your show for a long time now, I've always said the same thing too. I also don't really trust the Gaza Health Ministry. I'm just making the point that them revising the numbers down would be a point of evidence that they're being honest, not a point of evidence that you can't trust them. But look, I will just say this, okay? And Piers, again, because I've been coming on your show, I've done a lot of these debates, over the last year and a half or so. I would never, like, if you remember, there was this example. Attempted murder right now because he shot two people who thought
when we got the wheel put on, away we went again. But them that had their noses broke, they came back our him. Some went to the dispensary, and some to Dr. Gibbs's, and some to the infirmary, and had their broken ribses. Oh, me lads, you should have seen us getting, passing the folks along.
For that, because it's the cheapest, lamest form of argument. You are not responsible if you're telling the truth for as you see it, for some crazy person committing a horrific act of violence. By the way, we're talking about ongoing innocent people being killed for over 20 months at this point now. So that's what the whole conversation is about. But
I agree with his point in that sense. I wouldn't necessarily associate the attacks that we've been seeing related to it. And it could be as well. It could be. She could be right as well. She could have, it could be, this attack could be influenced by, but it doesn't mean that automatically. Again, we are not, it's always about who's right. Everybody wants to be right. And unfortunately, that just can't be the case all the time. So let's keep going then. Maybe to the next section, Piers on Israel stopping journalists doing their job. Very important.
Huge responsibility on my shoulders then about the lives of my journalists, but they were prepared to risk them to report the truth to the wider world. Israel has decided no journalists from outside can go in.
For 3 reasons.
And make that assessment themselves.
Yes.
What right does Israel have to do that?
For 3 reasons. Will you allow me to finish?
Well, there are no reasons.
Your
business whether the journalists view their safety as being at risk.
I'm sorry, you haven't heard the reasons yet. The first, of course, is the safety of the journalists, and I appreciate you don't accept that. The second...
I think it's a load of nonsense.
The second is the safety...
The idea you're doing is that some quaint concern for the safety of journalists is bullshit.
That was reason number one. Reason number two is the ability.
Better get better.
Is the ability of IDF soldiers to be able to conduct this war against Hamas without.
Without the journalists getting in the way.
No, without.
They've actually, by the way, they've killed more journalists in Palestinian journalists than in any war
Hamas
in
members
modern
wearing
history.
press vests are not journalists. And reason number three.
So none of them are journalists.
And reason number three.
So just to be clear, none of the Palestinian journalists who've been killed are actually journalists.
I said Hamas members.
Oh, they're all Hamas members.
Those that are. And
every single dead Palestinian journalist is a member of Hamas. Is that your position?
No, listen, I appreciate Piers.
That is also bullshit.
But misrepresenting every
So that's
word
2 out of 2. What's the third reason?
Our mutual friend Douglas Murray was embedded with the IDF in Lebanon.
You said the words yourself. I love Douglas, but he was embedded with the IDF.
Right.
He's unbelievably pro-Israel.
Let me finish.
So of course he was going to write what he witnessed while embedded with the IDF.
No, let me finish what his experiences there were. The difference
I
is
read
that
it. You have to tell me.
There is something I think that you won't have heard. The IDF are able to allow journalists into Lebanon. He wasn't the only one. There were many other international journalists with him.
There have been a tiny...
Those other international journalists with him were very clear.
There have been a tiny handful of journalists led in by the IDF in tightly controlled environments to witness what the IDF were prepared to let them see.
And you know what those journalists said?
And actually, what it needs this war to stop the bullshit, which is out of control, by the way, in this last 3 minutes, is to let international journalists go in and do their jobs. And they will worry with their networks or organizations about their safety, but they should be allowed to do their jobs. And there's only one reason why the Israeli government doesn't want international journalists crawling all over Gaza. It's because they do not want them reporting what they will find. Which, by the way, will include the bodies of thousands of children who you, on the Israeli side, are not counting as you count the terrorists you kill, but who journalists would.
Well, listen, on that note, I have to 100% agree with Piers Morgan on this one. I think journalists should be allowed to go in there. It should be up to their corporations, their companies, their media companies, their safety. It's always been handled that way. It shouldn't be up to the military whether they can or not go. I don't think the lawyer here Natasha has been able to explain the reason. I don't think she gave the third reason, but the first two reasons are not enough reasons to hide what's happening in the war over there in Israel, between Israel and Gaza. So I just it's actually the war is in Gaza, but you get the point. So I don't think no. But one thing is that they're not letting her finish. That is the point. Is getting a little bit of one-sided debate, not a fair debate, because she's not able to finish her job, her explanation, and also Piers is cutting her off and misinterpreting her words. That's not fair either.
Number three is that those journalists that were in Lebanon said that they had to be very careful about what they reported because of what Hezbollah would do to their colleagues in Beirut. The fact that international journalists have sunk to this level, that they would allow their reportage to be controlled by terrorist organizations, Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah included, is despicable. That is the real issue here that has driven
Actually,
the
it's not.
international
The real
community.
issue
Of course
is
it is.
Israel,
this is terrorist organizations' propaganda.
Actually, it's not. Let me bring
up.
David. Let me
and
bring
the fact
David.
that you will not allow me to answer a single question.
You know what?
here
You've made
will
all
be
your
perfectly
points, and they
evident to
all,
your
I'm
viewers.
afraid,
I
Natasha,
haven't. I certainly
turned out
haven't
to be
made all my
bullshit.
points.
So let me bring in Dave. Dave, look, I don't.
And that's what I'm talking about. You know that he's not letting her finish. He's not letting her speak, and at that point, it's kind of tough because listen, he has her with the. She hasn't given enough reasons for journalists not to be able to go there. But the fact of the matter is, they are not being able to, let her speak. Let her hang herself if that's the case. But you got to let her speak. So let's continue.
Were unprecedented, that it wasn't just adhering to international humanitarian law, the law of armed conflict, but in every respect was going far above the requirements, including in taking precautions to prevent civilian casualties.
How have they been so careful? Have they managed to destroy 70% of Gaza and killed, I think it's 50 to 60,000 people?
Well, those again are Hamas figures, which
What's
are
the figure,
not
then?
accurate.
What's the figure?
Well, you heard, I think, from the ambassador, 30,000.
How many people have you killed?
30,000. There you go with you again. I think there's been some misbriefing in this.
Well, you seem to be speaking on behalf of the government.
No,
so.
I'm speaking on behalf of the facts and the proper application of law, which I appreciate neither of you seem to be particularly interested in. But I will maintain my interest, in particular, the fact that these casualty figures by Hamas do not take account of how these people are said to have died. We know Hamas are shooting their own civilians. That false report of Palestinian civilians at aid centres being targeted by Israel, that was in fact Hamas shooting them.
You don't know that.
We have the drone footage.
You don't know that.
And we have
You actually don't know who killed them.
We have consistent accounts.
The investigation is still going on, but of course it's an Israeli investigation, which will doubtless exonerate the Israeli forces.
We also know that Palestinian civilians are killed by indiscriminate missiles. Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas rockets, when they fall short in the Gaza Strip, they don't fall with a proportionality analysis. They don't fall precisely in the way that Israeli strikes are conducted with warnings before.
If you're doing everything so magnificently by the book, why is it that so many allies of Israel are now queuing up, and former prime ministers of Israel are queuing up to condemn it? Are they all utterly deluded?
No, there are two particular reasons for this. The first is what we have seen with the manufacturing of this disinformation that comes out of Gaza from Hamas, that is promoted by NGOs formerly respected like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, that is then in turn reported by UN special rapporteurs, that finds its way into Security Council resolutions or General Assembly resolutions, that then in turn makes it up to institutions like the ICC and the ICJ. And then, once that circle of disinformation is complete, these matters are often re-reported by the NGOs that started this disinformation cycle in the first place. That's reason number one. Reason number two is because of the mode in which the international media have conducted their reporting of this conflict. We have the Al-Ali hospital as a prime example on the 17th of October 2023. Immediately it was reported that this was an Israeli airstrike. That was false. Piers, just like the reports of Israel targeting Palestinian civilians trying to get aid were false. I urge you to use a little bit of logic here to assess what on earth Israel's objective could be, targeting civilians or hitting hospitals like this willy-nilly, which it does not do without good reason because Hamas has used them as command and control centers, and when it provides warnings to enable civilians to evacuate. Why on earth would Israel be targeting Palestinian civilians when it has been seeking from the get-go to evacuate them, to provide humanitarian corridors, which it has defended, even though although Hamas has fired onto these civilians as they seek to flee areas where Hamas has embedded its terror infrastructure in these civilian areas, in mosques, schools, hospitals, and every second house when I was in Rafah that we saw. That is the truly...
How many houses did you see?
That is the truly...
How many houses did you see?
Well, many of them were destroyed,
how many did you see?
unfortunately.
You said every second house. You saw
yes.
10 houses.
No, tens,
So,
plural.
10.
The
Well, how
fact
many?
of the matter
well,
is...
hang on, how many?
But Hamas
You said
are
every
clear.
second house.
Yes.
So how many did you see?
No, every second house.
How many
in
houses
Rafah
did you go into?
Doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Because
You've made a statement. You said every second house. How many did you go into?
the houses were
Give
no
me a
longer
number.
left there to
You
go
know how
into.
many
I said
houses you went
tens.
into?
Tens.
What? 10, 15, 20?
Piers, you're missing the point here, I'm
No,
afraid.
no, I know the
point is that Hamas...
You've made a claim.
Hamas
I'm simply
makes
asking
no-
you to give me a number. Numbers are not your strong point. I know that.
Beg your pardon?
But I imagine you remember how many houses you went into.
No, we saw destroyed houses in the Rafah area because Hamas has been using these houses as part of its terror infrastructure.
How do you know?
Because they make clear
You just
their
said you went
tactic.
into them and you...
No, I
you said,
never...
you said,
Again, you're putting words in my mouth. If you would listen, I think things would be a lot clearer.
Right.
Hamas have
So
made
you
it
know
clear...
what was inside houses, even though you didn't go inside them, and they were all
You
obliterated.
gotta let her finish, though,
go
man.
inside them because they were booby-trapped by
You
Hamas.
didn't go
But what
inside
I
them,
did
and they were all
see-
destroyed.
What I did
but
see...
you knew they were all full of Hamas stuff.
What I did see
How?
was drone footage that goes into...
drone footage,
That
okay.
went into these houses that
So
demonstrated...
you didn't go into the houses, you did
Hamas-
IDF.
Well, look,
all right,
Hamas
Dave-
make it very clear.
You know
If
what,
won't
I'm sorry,
take
it's
my
just all
word for it,
flannel, isn't
you always take Hamas's word for it. So listen to what they
Yeah,
say.
you wouldn't take your...
Well,
It sounds like a lot of old bullshit again.
And listen, and that's the fact of the matter here, you know, that we cannot take Hamas' word for everything. Just as much as we can't really take a lot of Israel's word for it, but the fact of the matter is Israel is a country, is an independent country, is a democratic country, and Hamas is a terrorist group. At some point, you're going to have to, I think the trust has to be a little more towards the Israeli side. And listen, I may be speaking of ignorance and people get stuffed and people get touchy with this subject, but at the end of the day, we just can't be trusting a terrorist group to tell us the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Since when? You know, ISIS is going to tell us the truth of what's happening in the war as well. We got to keep an open mind. I think in this debate, listen, it should have just been Piers Morgan and Natasha, and this would have been, you know, fine. But Dave Smith, what did he contribute to this? Nothing at all. You know, it's anyway. Let me know what you think about this debate in the particular in the comment section down below. It's going on a little bit longer, but listen, it was actually a lot longer. It's like an hour long, so it is what it is. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this one.